Hey there, hi there, ho there, everyone, and welcome. And normally I'm coming to you from California, but today I am in Wisconsin and I'll be heading back to California. So, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Carolyn Rowley. I am the executive director and founder at Cayenne Wellness Center, where we take care of people, persons, and families diagnosed with sickle cell disease across the state of California. And we do this with the stellar work of our compassionate CHWs, community health workers, that are regionally placed throughout California. We also have a lot of great educational programs, the mini seminars being one of them. Um, Coming up, we are partnering with Sickle Cell Consortium, SC3, to do again the annual World Sickle Cell Day. And the theme, Power and Unity and Power in Numbers. We're also, we also had to let you all know the registration is now open for our 14th, 15th annual, let's get that straight, 15th annual Sickle Cell Disease Educational Summit. And the theme is the giants, visionaries, and pioneers, past, present, and future. Are we where they want us to be? Registration is now open, and that's in September 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th. We look forward to seeing you there either virtually or in California. We have the Ask the Expert, moderated by Dr. Keith Carollo. And so that's the second Friday of every month, 9 to 10:30, focusing on this year an organ complication. We're known for the advocacy that we do and the support groups and much, much more. Couple of things. We actually have a couple of initiatives. One called STACK, Sickle Cell Trait Awareness Campaign, where we're focusing on having in California first, and then we'll spread out the middle school, high school, and college age students knowing what their trait status is, knowing what's in their genes. And so we launched that in January. It's a statewide public health campaign that's called STACK. And we also have our California Sickle Cell Disease Mental Health Initiative. And we're excited about that. We launched that last year. And I would have to say, as of today, there are 40 persons who are taking part in accessing free mental health services. And so we wanted to make it easy for people if they wanted to speak with someone. And so we've been doing that. And it's available for those who have sickle cell disease and their family members residing in California. So speaking of mental health, we this is our mini seminar, and this particular session it is on mental health. And we've had several over the years on mental health. Last year we had Theopia Jackson, Dr. Jackson, and before that we had Dr. Jonah Saint. This year we were moderating, the moderator is Felicia Hunt. And before introducing her, I wanted to just share with you, mental health will always be one of our mini seminars because it's that important. Living with sickle cell disease can be challenging on so many fronts. And so not just physical, but also in terms of just living and wanting to live with purpose can also sometimes be challenging. So we recognize the need to be able to do this. This particular for this year, because Cayenne always has a holistic perspective, we're focusing on uh, our foundation. Our foundation is based upon Alfred Adler's life tasks, which are work, social, love, self-acceptance, and spirituality. And so today we're going to be focusing on work and social and what that means. So why don't we bring on Dr. Felicia Hunt, who is our moderator for this one and the next two mini seminars. How you
Almost, doctor.
okay. So we're gonna
Yeah.
say the term is ABD. So
Yeah.
Dr. Felicia Hunt, ABD.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Thank
so
you.
you're welcome, dear. So why don't you introduce yourself?
I will. Thank you. First of all, I would like to say thank you to you, Dr. Rowley, for always putting on these events to educate and empower the warriors. I like to thank Pfizer for the sponsorship, and I like to thank the audience for showing up today and being their best selves that they can be. So, my name is Felicia Hunt, and I am an alchemist that help people feel comfortable in their own skin. I am a warrior. I am an advocate. I am a marriage and family therapist and a certified sex coach. And I'm so glad to be here today for our topic of on work and social. So I have a quote here I want to say. I believe that every single event in life ever happens in an opportunity to choose love over fear. So, as we move forward today and we talk about work and social and how living with sickle cell disease impact those two areas in our lives, I want us to just remember we have a choice. And sometimes we feel fear, but the ultimate goal is to love ourselves and have confidence in ourselves that we can achieve whatever we set our minds to. So I'm very grateful to be here and thank you again.
Thank you. So before you introduce your guest, I
Yeah.
wanted to um, kind of lay out the foundation to
Mm-hmm.
everyone. Why Alfred Adler? Because um, there's we're both psychologists, and so for myself, Alfred Adler, who was a student of Sigmund Freud, broke away and developed this theory called in based upon individual psychology. So I think to the audience, even if you don't know the name Alfred Adler, you know some of his principles like inferiority and superiority complex. So you may have heard of that. Um, I think the audience, you may have heard of birth order in terms of firstborn, middle, oldest, only. And so those were themes that he came up with. And I think for the psychologists out there or the social workers, he actually was the one who developed group therapy. So there's several things that actually he's known for that you may not have known that it was Alfred Adler. But one of the things, and then a few other things, but one of the things that I like that I, for over 30 years, have intertwined with our holistic approach has to do with life tasks. And so that is the holistic framework that we actually work from. So it doesn't matter what it is that you're having to, whatever it is, quote, that somebody may have diagnosed you as, or that you may be wanting to overcome, it is important to look at all 5 of these life tasks just to see if they're in order and in balance. So, and I mentioned earlier, those life tasks are work,
Mm-hmm.
social, love, self acceptance, spirituality. And with work specifically, it's not about that you have a job, even going to school is a job. And so work has to do with either school or going to a particular, 9 to 5, what have you. And social has to do with family and your family dynamics, as well as your friends and those relationships. So Dr. Felicia, ABD, will be focusing on just the 2 because there's a lot to really look at, just the 2 today. I think part 2 will look at love. Of course, it'll take the whole time to look at love. And then the last one we'll look at self acceptance and spirituality.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, so to continue on the Adler point of view, he postures that we are social being. So everything we experience is embedded in that social context. And so having sickle cell or if you look at the stages of development, let me start there. And when we are infants, we don't have an identity. We identify ourselves with caregiver or the good enough parent, whoever that may be. And as we grow in our stages of development, this is where Adler talks about this inferior or superior complex because, you know, we don't have that uh, confidence in ourself and our being yet or knowing who we fully are. And so then as we develop and whatever goes on in our environment, it can trigger us or it can cause some sort of like behavior. Like, say, for instance, we could become or feel like we're either abandoned or we can feel like we are codependent. And so it all works together in terms of socially or what's going on in the environment. So as we know, whenever we got diagnosed for sickle cell disease, that really played a part on how we see ourselves in the world and how are we going to behave in the world and identify ourselves living with sickle cell. And so we all know, and at some point have experienced having to make some very difficult decisions and probably, have felt abandoned or felt like, we didn't have the support we need around understanding having this disease. And so, this conversation today that we're going to have with the two other speakers that I will be bringing up, which is Dr. Terry and Mr. James. I believe Mr. James Griffin. Dr. Terry is Jackson. Yes, Dr. Jackson. So these two gentlemen here with us will be joining in on the conversation, telling their stories about how they live and express themselves with sickle cell and all the difficulties with work and society and how they manage to make it through. And so we're so glad, gentlemen, that you are here with us today. And so, Dr. Terry, with that being said, what would you like to say to the audience?
Well, first, I'd like to say good afternoon. I am on the East Coast, so it is the afternoon now. I'd like to thank Dr. Raleigh and Kaya Wellness for the invitation to speak at this mini-series and for holding this mini-series, and Pfizer for the sponsorship of this mini seminar as well. So thank you very much. I'm humbled by this opportunity. It's, I guess, a little bit interesting that I'm regularly asked to, when I'm asked to speak, it often has to do with this subject, work and social and mental health. I am actually a geneticist. I have a PhD from Duke University in genetics and genomics. It is because I have sickle cell that I had an interest in genetics, being in the hospital so much. I wasn't drawn to the doctors, really. I was drawn to all the equipment and ways, the things behind the doctors. And so
You kind of
can you,
froze, but yeah, kind of frozen, but go right ahead, Miss C.
can you, am I back now?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't know why that happened. So speaking on mental health, you can see how something like this illness, it's all encompassing, right? For many people, it almost it takes over your life. It is your identity almost. It becomes a huge part of your identity. And that, I can say that that is how I feel. I'm strong in the sickle cell community. As you can see, this illness has directed my career. Dr. Riley spoke on how when you talk about work, you can, academics and school is included. But first, I wanted to say that my awareness of my own mental health and how it's been affected and impacted by sickle cell disease, a lot of that awareness comes from having a greater connection to the sickle cell community. It's like I was somewhat, I mean, how do I say this? You know, growing up, having something all of your life, you feel like the things are normal. Sometimes you don't even recognize the difference between yourself and someone else because this is normal to you. So I was very oblivious, I guess I could say, of some of the things that were directly impacting me that comes from having sickle cell. And it was in the mid 2010s when social media exploded, Facebook went public, and and then the sickle cell community became smaller, I guess I should say, or for me, larger, right? And being in all of these groups and chats, and it really opened my eyes greatly because since we are so rare, I didn't really grow up around anybody else that had sickle cell. I only saw people with sickle cell when I went to summer camp when I was a child. Um, and then it probably wasn't until my 30s that I lived in an apartment complex basically that housed a number of people who had sickle cell, but we didn't necessarily talk about sickle cell either. So it was that social media connection that I started finding out, like, oh, wow, like me too, or hearing other people's stories where, it almost, I guess you could say, created almost an anxiety in me, or I've started focusing on certain things regarding mental health because of listening to other people. In fact, I would say that one example would be that I did live in California for 3.5 years, and I was invited to a GBT roundtable discussion, and a gentleman from LA, he spoke directly about work and relationships and how, I believe he was in the music industry, and he was talking about how difficult the music industry is, how tough you got to be, and how he kind of had to hide his illness. And then about relationships, kind of being the man of the house, having to be the one that's like kind of paying the bills and all this. Like I was kind of, he introduced me to that. Like it never really crossed my mind. Um, so basically, I guess I would say that I was always in school.
Okay.
I'm not married. I don't have any children. Um, and so I would say that one of the things that I was doing that I recognized kind of deals with my mental health is I felt safe in academia. I always felt like, I had teachers that always helped me, professors. I felt very, very comfortable there. And that's where I wanted to stay. I didn't want to go out kind of sort of into the real world. Like that gave me, a bit of anxiety. I had a friend who would be like, man, you got to get out of the, school and go work at a company, blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, not at all. I'm going to this university and that's it. But then I was at a very reputable university, and it was my first job. And it wasn't my sickle cell that kind of caused the problem with my supervisor. But once she had it out for me, she used my sickle cell against me, you
Hmm.
know, as a tool to just, like she had a mental health problem, honestly. Like she just was out of control. And she was, dead set on just trying to ruin me. And so she would take me into conference rooms and just fuss at me for like 45 minutes straight, tell me you're not a success, and just belittle me, honestly. And so that was my first experience where science and academia let me down. And that basically ended in 2018. Um, and I ended up coming back home to Virginia. And so looking back on it, that whole experience uh, has been traumatizing to me, because now I'm thinking, oh, well, if I go out and get another job, what if somebody else doesn't understand? They act like, because, in the beginning, they were like, oh, yes, we understand, that you have these doctor's appointments all the time and you may be sick. But then later, it turned all around and you're gone this much and you got these other people looking behind you. And the thing is, the supervisor was never there. She worked from home, only came to work 2 times every 2 weeks. And that wasn't the sentiment at all for the people who were there every day. She was just looking for something. Because all my coworkers were very understanding. Um, and so it caused a trauma to me. And despite the fact that they have all these laws and all these policies to
Right.
protect people with disabilities and illnesses,
Right.
this illness, it's rather difficult to fit into that 9 to 5 schedule, Monday through Friday. And I almost don't necessarily blame the system. I get it, like you need to be reliable, you need to be productive, you need to, do your thing. But it's just very difficult to fit into that mold having sickle cell. I believe 52% of people with sickle cell aren't working, and a lot of these people do have skills. It's just that trying to fit into that mold is troublesome. All having to be hospitalized for weeks. I know people who, I'm generally hospitalized from a couple of days to, I think the most ever has been 11 days. And that was like just once or twice. But I know people who've been weeks and months in the hospital. And like, how are they supposed to work? You know what I'm saying? How are they
Right.
supposed to put food on the table and live? And then when you are in something like have get disability or SSI, that's not
Mm-hmm.
anything that can sustain anybody. You
It
still
is not.
somehow be dependent on
Yes.
someone else, and that usually goes towards family, right? Or the person you're in a relationship, which causes burden on them as well. So that would be kind of the me summing up my work experience and the mental health
Mhm.
situation there, because I'm now trying to get back into my career again. I was recently offered a professor position at a university, and I'm excited about it. I'm like, you know what, I get to go be myself again. But in the
Right.
back of my mind, I'm still like, what's going to happen? Are they going to understand? What if what if I can't call ahead for some reason? I get sick in the middle of the night and was unable to really let them know I'm not going to be able to be there for the class. All these concerns are
Right.
popping up and building an anxiety, you
Mhm.
know but I have to be able to overcome that and hopefully be able to communicate with the university my needs, and somehow we can negotiate a way that this will work. I believe it can work totally. But I'm just saying that those anxieties are there. It has greatly affected my mental health after having that experience. And you can see I'm still running to academia again, because it's still like, oh, that's the safest place I know. That's the only place that I really know. Um,
Well, congratulations on the job,
thank you.
so
I
well, go
appreciate
ahead.
it.
Continue. Yeah, I just wanted to say congratulations. I mean, that is a battle because you had some lived experience.
Mhm.
And like you say, it's in the back of your mind, but do that positive affirmation, those meditations and things like that, those confirmations, so that you can be gentle and kind with yourself to know that you can do it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And when
And
you think
and I
about
want
mental health, you're thinking about, often people go and you think of such a depression and anxiety, anger, and behavioral types of issues. But I believe that's the heavy side, because there's also the conversation about, positive mental health. And I'm still trying to get to that part of the conversation, because I'm still thinking about the problems. Like how my question is, how does or has sickle cell affected my mental health? And I have to continuously kind of like go through time, and look back on incidents, and even in the present, um, think about it in this sense, because like I was saying before, it was never even a thought
Well, I
until.
hope we can unpack that a little bit more as we continue. But Dr. Raleigh, it seemed like you wanted to say something, and then we can move to James.
I wanted I wanted to interject because Dr. Terry said something. So this idea of work, the first life task, it has to do with going to school and or getting a job. So if you look at folks with sickle cell disease, just as a child, and many folks, I've discovered that unfortunately, many persons with sickle cell disease, they were not able to obtain their high school diploma or their GED. And I think that's actually more than we realize because of the number of days that they miss school. And to the point that as they get older, it becomes a little challenging to then try to make up all of that, you know?
You do. I
And
know.
I'm saying that because, yes, I'm saying that because so, you know, we want people to push forward. We want them to accomplish that hurdle. But I don't think people realize how challenging it is, particularly the number of days that one may miss school. And which the social part, which I'm sure we're going to get to, is next. But that social part and those family dynamics actually play a role in that. So for children, you're dependent. And so you're going to school because you have to be in school, but you're also dependent upon family. So a lot of that is so how does family help you deal with that? Are they the source of your stress? Are they are we all becoming educated together on sickle cell and triggers and what to do? So you can see now how things right now are intertwined. You're young, you have to go to school, you're in, and then you get that fatigue. You had to try to make up. You miss so many days of school. How do you actually do that? Nowadays, they don't hold you back, so you move forward, and they don't set
Right.
you up for success.
Mm.
So I just want everybody to understand there's a lot to unpack just in terms of the work part or no, that school part. And for those of
Yeah.
you, those of us who actually had a chance to go to college, but that too may have been a challenge. You have a little bit more freedom, but you may have missed school, some assignments. You're still trying to push forward. And again, sometimes people don't make it all the way through. So I just want us to keep in mind that for ourselves to have grace and for others to have grace, and also to look at the blessing. For those of you guys who are keep on keeping on, it's a great thing to be able to have that accomplishment. And so our goal here at Cayenne is to be able to assist you with also too making helping you get those accomplishments. Just wanted to interject that. Continue.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, I know. I have a report card that has 53 days missed out of school. So I experienced that. And then, like you say, in the developmental process, you miss stuff, the comprehension, they pass you on, and that had always been my insecurity about education, until I decided to return when I got older. And I said, I'm just going to start all over from the beginning, because I knew I had missed a lot of fundamental things that I needed to know to be able to go as far as I have, in my accomplishments. So it's very real. All right, Mr. James, what do you have to say?
Thank you for having me on here, Dr. Rowley. Invite me to speak today. Also, thank you to the sponsors, Pfizer. Terry mentioned that. Um, so yeah, I'll just talk about a little bit about my background of how I found out I had sickle cell. So I was diagnosed with sickle cell at the age of 2. Growing up, the only person in my family who had sickle cell, my mother had 2 older children at the time. She didn't know that her or my father didn't know they carried the trait for sickle cell until I was born. When I was born, I had jaundice, but the doctors told them it was normal for babies to have jaundice, so they had nothing to worry about. And then as I continued to grow, I would have jaundice, and then eventually one day, just out of nowhere, while I was playing with my other 2 siblings, my mother heard me crying and ran over to me and picked me up, and she noticed my hand was swollen and puffy, like the size of a tennis ball. And then that's when she took me to the hospital. I got diagnosed with sickle cell, and later on, a genetic counselor came and talked to them and told them, like, this is what you're gonna have to deal with. This is what sickle cell is about. He's gonna have to have blood transfusions. He's gonna have to deal with pain. And as a kid, I was in and out of the hospital. I know my parents didn't know anything about sickle cell, so they had to learn as I learned. They only heard the term before me, so um, just being the only one in my family, and then eventually they would go on and have another child. I still don't think people, if fortunately she didn't have sickle cell, so I'm the only one in my family, and so I've always felt like I was alone. But I think that people don't understand when you say the chances of having sickle cell, it's 50%. I don't think people quite understand that it's each pregnancy and not just like, okay, you have 4 children, only one of them. No, because I've grown up and seeing children at parties and families at parties. I've seen families with more than one person with sickle cell, and I'm just like, that has to be very tough and very hard on the family to go through that with more than one child. So thankfully, I'm blessed. My family was blessed that I was the only one to have it, and I say it's kind of good. I feel like I was the only strong enough to handle sickle cell, even though it's not something that you want to go through. But I didn't want to see any other my siblings have sickle cell, and after me, it's a good thing that my younger sister didn't have sickle cell. So just growing up and just living life and just being in the area I was at, in my environment. Like I said, I was the only one that I noticed that I had sickle cell when I went to school. I was in and out of the hospital. My mother had to tell my counselors and stay in touch with, like the school system and principals so that they knew when I was out where I was at. I was in the hospital. So as a child, I remember my principal driving me home from school one day because of pain. I remember, just not being able to do the things I was a other children was able to do. I always wanted to play sports. I couldn't play sports because of sickle cell. During recess, I would have to take time out to sit down so I wouldn't go through crisis. And all of that is hard on a child because you just want to be a normal child, and you're going through these pains and you don't understand why. And then later on, you're in the hospital for a day or a week. And when I was younger, I was in the hospital, it seemed like a week. the least amount of time, because it was just harder for a child to get back to being healthy and having a higher hemoglobin, and just dealing with the IVs, and knowing when I would get sick, I would have to go to the hospital and get poked. It was traumatizing. It's something that would wear on my emotions, like be in the back of my mind. Like, I don't want to go in because I don't want to get stuck. And it was hard to get IVs. I remember being on like the gurneys or the hard tables, and having like 3-4 nurses hold me down so they can get an IV as a child, because I'm fighting and I'm screaming and I'm in pain. So that's what I would go through as a child. And then as I got older and going to middle school, I eventually had to withdraw from school because, number one, during gym and recess, I wasn't able to, you know, get inside the pool. Every time I got into a pool, I would end up in a crisis. So eventually, my mother would just say, you know what, from 7th grade on, I didn't have to take gym, and I didn't have to go through jump in the pool. I didn't have to do recess because the track, running around the track, the teacher tell me you can speed walk, but I'm still, tired, so I'm not able to do that. And it's always just like I had more people attention always on me, and I didn't want that attention. And when you have sickle cell and you don't know anybody else with it, and the people around you don't know anything about it, it's tough. You feel like you're all alone. And I went to a school that was, a suburb school, so I'm not only the only one dealing with sickle cell, but I'm majority only African American or black male in my class. And so on top of that, it was just hard to go through, and just hard to always explain or have people look at me, because I had a lot of jaundice growing up. In fact, I had jaundice until I got on the treatment, hydroxyurea, but I had a lot of jaundice growing up. So I was always yellow eyes and always get questions on that, and just, try to not be as much noticed. I wore glasses, so it was easy for me to just hide behind the tents. But then in middle school, high school, I had a lot of people ask, do you smoke? You must smoke. And sometimes you just say, yeah, just to just to get people out of your face, or just to seem cool, because I don't want to go into an explanation. I don't want to tell you everything I go through. And my family, we was close knit, and we kept it between us. So that was a thing of, always having to worry about, is somebody going to ask me about my eyes? Is somebody going to, tease me about my eyes? And then my mother got it to where I could carry a water bottle. Now you think about carrying a water bottle is normal. Everybody has a water bottle wherever you go. Well, for me in school, the only one with a water bottle, and it's like you have some special privilege. Now the kids is asking about the water bottle. So it was always attention that I never really wanted. Um, I always looked at myself as being like others. I never wanted to let them know, because I was just, I could prove that I could do just as much as you can do. So I never wanted to share that information or just be vulnerable like that. So that was a part that I had to go through. And, I missed a lot. Like I said, missed a lot of school. I did have siblings who went to my school, so it was easy for me to get the homework and stay on top of things. And then going into high school, the same thing. I had a couple study halls because I didn't have gym, so I was able to stay on top of work. But graduated high school, not knowing what I could do because of my health would limit me. That's a big decision that we don't think about. What can we do? So it was all things thrown out, like trades or this. My dad was a welder, and my mother, she was a preschool teacher. So, that's all I seen. I always wanted to play sports, but knew I couldn't. Even tried out for the team, knowing I couldn't play because of the physicality and the exertion. But just not knowing what I was going to do once I left school. And I ended up going into a trade school for graphics art, but I didn't go to a university because I didn't want to be sick on campus. I didn't want to go through those campuses, and knowing I couldn't go away, because I feel like, how can I keep up with my health and I'm in a different state?
Me too. I felt that way too.
Yeah,
That's why I didn't go to college when I was younger. I was like, who's gonna take care of me?
Yeah, how can I keep up with my health? Who's gonna take care of me? As I got older, I was in and out of. I had more crises that would, like, as a child, you get them in certain places, and you're like, you're used to it. But then as you get older, it starts happening in other places, and it starts feeling like it's progressed, and it's worse than the child. So the times I did get it, I wasn't able to do anything. So I just stayed local, decided to stay local. Never told anybody I had sickle cell until I got to college. I told my professors so that they could make sure when I was out, I wasn't just missing because. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much my direction, my journey. And then I got into like I said, graphics art. Couldn't work the job though because it was still a lot of heavy bending and lifting. So I just grew up just working different jobs. I knew I liked being around people. When I would go through jaundice, I didn't want to be around people though. That was the thing. So I would kind of just do like, you know, office jobs or stockroom jobs, but then that wasn't my personality. So I eventually, just continued to do what I love was being around people, even though when I would have the times of jaundice, I would get questions or have people look at me, but I just decided to keep going with it. And
Awesome.
that's what I did. And the reason, another thing I want to say, the reason why I didn't go far away either, because growing up, every time I spent time away, or I would be like, I'm gonna spend the night at my friend's house, it was always a time I would get an unexpected crisis. So
Mm.
that kept me from wanting to like be far away, because every time it seemed like every time I was at a friend's house, I'm supposed to spend the night and gonna have a good time, I would go into a crisis. I would have to get driven home at night by their parents, and it's just something I didn't want to do, to disturb somebody to bring me home, and they didn't understand it, but they would see the pain in me and just, say that I'm gonna pray for you. I hope you're better. And so those type of situations kept me from wanting to venture out as far as go away and try to be on my own, just because I didn't want to have that crisis. So that's why I decided to stay locally and not go to away for college.
So, how are you now as an adult and living your life socially? Do you allow yourself to get out more now?
Oh yeah, I'm still I still always get out. I ended up, once, like I said, once I got on hydroxyurea, and I would go places, but I just never wanted to be away for a long time. I traveled to, I have family relatives in I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I didn't mention that, but I had families and relatives in Minnesota, so you know go out there and visit them. But like on the way back, I would end up with a fever because of the buses being too cold, and then end up in the fever, end up in the hospital. But I still did things as a kid. I still was um in an adult. I still did things, but I just never wanted to be away for long periods of time. As an adult now, and especially once I got on hydroxyurea, I was able to fly for the first time. I was able to go more places, and now I have my health under control. I'm able to
Awesome.
manage and do things like, just up and go when I want to, and just, you know, live life, because that's what we're here to do.
Awesome. Dr. Terry, it looked like you had something to say.
Yes, I did. I wanted to just echo James's story because he spoke much about childhood and these hospitalizations. And,
Mm.
I was really wanted to say that a lot of my own trauma it originates from hospitalizations. Um, as a child, I would say it was, they were trying to take care of me, but it was very painful and graphic and some extremes. In older years, I would say it comes more from the biases and the stigmas. But as a child, they tied me down to the bed because I pulled the IV out. They made me plenty of times when I was a kid. They would put me inside of a tub with ice water in it to bring
Mm.
the temperature down. Um, I've been. One time I went to the hospital and they wanted to give me like some kind of test, and the doctors poked me so many times that I was bruised all over my body. And I had to live with all these incidents. And now we start talking about people with sickle cell having forms of PTSD. And so I've been diagnosed with having that because actually going to the hospital is a trigger for me. They often you hear they say we can be difficult in the hospital and defensive and so on and so forth, and that is me. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a place where you're supposed to go for safety, but it ends up that I end up feeling like I'm at a place where I'm not necessarily safe, or I'm not going to be listened to or ignored, and then I have all these prior hospitalizations that have compounded on top of each other. So when I go into the hospital, I'm almost already ready for a fight. I'm almost looking for a fight, like, for somebody to disagree with me or not give me the proper treatment or say something wrong. That the ER is a very difficult place for people with our illness, because I don't believe that the ER is a place that's meant for people like ourselves. It's meant for people who, broke their bone or something. They don't know what's wrong with them. Something just crazy happened. Instead of people who have illnesses that they've been living with all their lives and that they understand. And I would say the difference between James and my story is you were very apprehensive and kind of quiet about your illness, but I was the poster child for the state of Virginia, so everybody knew. And I was also somewhat footloose and fancy free. I would go to the party, and if I got sick, I just got sick, and then it was going to be some type of drama. So hopefully I'll be okay. That's how I always felt. But it was very public that I had this illness, and so I often think about how I came from a very stable home, and like I was saying earlier, I had teachers and professors and stuff that were very understanding, and that relationship with family, as Dr. Rowley said, was very important to getting through the education, so to speak. And a lot of people with sickle cell do not have that. And so it's I guess disappointing a little bit that there isn't more support for all of us, because I don't necessarily think about myself. I usually think about the whole community, and I often feel a bit different than a lot of other people feel about this illness. But I want to try to represent them as well, and what they're going through. And so therefore, the mental health aspect of this is very important, because, I have mental health issues with this, and I really, I feel like I had a pretty good life, and I didn't have a lot of difficulties that other people with this illness have. And so we need more people and students that are interested in psychiatry and psychology to actually take on sickle cell and do more research in this field, because it's like I was about to say earlier, I only heard about it like 5 years ago, mental health and sickle cell. It's just like that's the first time it even dawned on me that this connection even existed.
Yes.
I just want to say,
So,
I'm sorry, I was going to say, Dr. Raleigh, you have something to say, and then we'll take the question. Go ahead, Dr. Raleigh.
Perfect. So, thank you. So, thank you both. So that was a good display, I believe, of the work, school and work aspect. So before we get into the social, I heard a couple of things where, James, I think part of it is as we get older, and I think now that our world, so Dr. Terry said it as well, it's smaller but yet larger, meaning that we have access to so many educational portals and Facebook and all of that. My hope is that one begins to understand their triggers, because once you begin to understand your trigger, your world can open up you can still do so many things, but you understand that which is a trigger for you, which would be definitely a different trigger for someone else. So, James, you mentioned swimming, and so that's definitely a trigger for you. And I know that, but there's a couple of people in our community, and she's a lifeguard. I I don't know how she does that, but that she has sickle cell disease and she's a lifeguard. And so that obviously is not a trigger for her. So
Right.
my takeaway, I would like for you all, everyone that's listening, even the caregivers, to begin to help your son, daughter, or for yourself, know what your triggers are, because then the world is open to you to be able to do so much. And but yet you kinda know, I've done when that happened, when I did this happened, that's just one aspect of your life. That doesn't mean that you can't do other things. So that's what reminded me, James, when you were speaking, is terms of, recognizing the triggers, which is not a limitation, like anything. It's just, a matter of, how much you can push something to where you don't actually have a pain episode. So I was just thinking that you all gave great examples of that work part that Outler talks about. So before going to the social, we have some questions that are piling up. So the tech team will put them in the on the Dr. Felicia
Yes.
ABD will read them.
So it says these sessions are a gem. Why is sickle cell disease always secret? I went away and had a crisis that was devastating. Trauma for me has been hospital visits and mental anguish, ensued for minutes to discharge. So, why is sickle cell disease always a secret? Anyone?
I would say
Well,
just.
if I can just chime in, I don't know if you guys
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, go right ahead.
go. Yeah, I think our Wi-Fi things are kind of happening, but you know, it is and it isn't. I think for those who may not share their story, that is their right. I think many of us see it as a perfect opportunity to educate someone, and because the more you can educate, they may know someone, particularly if they know another healthcare provider, who can really make a difference. So I'm the one that says, when you see something, say something, whether you're a nurse or a doctor or whomever. So I think the secrecy has to do with, and we're going to get to that social part soon. It may be part of your family dynamics, because I don't think it's a secret in terms of our society, but I do think that it is. Dr. Felicia mentioned it earlier, that I think it's a choice. And so that may be something that's social within your family, whether or not that's their secrecy or not. And that's my opinion.
Yeah. Go ahead, James. What do you what's
I
your
was just gonna say my opinion. I believe because the way it gets labeled as a black disease, and just coming from the history of black people, we don't want to share our disease and be labeled all these different type of labels, because because of the trauma we went through as a culture. So I think a lot of people just cover it up and just don't talk about it, and that's just my opinion. But that's the reason I believe it's a secret. And later on in life, my mother told me that she had an older sister who had sickle cell, and she didn't know she had it until she passed away, because her mom never shared it with her, but they knew she was sick often and would have to go to the hospital. But it was just, so that's probably where my mother was the way she was um in regards to sickle cell, and helped me not share it, or just wanted to keep it between the family. But growing up, we were always taught like this is family business, this stays in the family. So I think that's
yeah.
just a cultural
that
thing,
old,
in my
yeah.
opinion.
That old adage, I would like to add to that, not only that is, if you've been teased as a child, you
Yes.
know, as you get older, you know, you like, oh, your first lived experience of sharing, I have sickle cell disease with somebody, they teasing you, they picking on you, they constantly chasing you, calling you names. And so why would you want to share? You know what I mean? Because your first lived experience say, well, when I share, bad things happen. And so we internalize it in a way that it's for protection. We build a wall to protect ourselves from society, and not and including what you just said, James, you know, with this stigma, this stigmatizing, you know, you're black, and what the black culture had to go through, you know, with the history, you know, of being inferior, and so we always had to be better. And so to protect ourselves, you know, I think that's some of the reasons why some people choose to keep it secret. All right. That's all the questions. So,
And
you
that
know what
I was
go
gonna
ahead.
say, and that was my first experience when I opened up.
Mhm.
I did get teased. I remember it. I was at a park plan. This was a holiday, 4th of July, and I'm at the park
Mhm.
plan and at the swing sets, and I go ahead to share with some people because, like I said, my eyes was yellow, and I said I have sickle cell disease, and they all start running away.
Oh, what
You
is
know, yeah,
that?
screaming. You know how
What
kids do. Kids
is
don't
that
know, but
contagious?
yeah,
Get
they
away
all start running
from me.
away. And, you know, it upset me, but it
Yeah,
upset my cousin even more to the point that he wanted to go fight.
I
so,
know. I know.
that just made me say, okay, I'm not gonna speak up about it. I just keep it to myself because I was trying to share it, and then like every experience I did share, it was negative. So I kind of just continue to keep it to myself.
You know, you know, you got to be in a vulnerable place, you know what I mean? And you got to trust. It has to be a trust
Mhm.
factor when you show. It seems like it says here, I was bullied in the 7th grade because I had it and no one wanted to sit next to me in class. Right. Right. Classic, you know. And so as we continue this discussion, we will unfold now, getting into the social aspect of it. It's like, how do we navigate socially with people in our life? You know, we did cover work, we did cover school, but how relationships, you with your family dynamics, these types of systems. Um, you know, I know for me, I'll just start with me. My mom and dad had the trait, of course, and they didn't know anything about it. My dad was illiterate. He couldn't read or write, but he knew how to spell his name. My mom was a high school graduate, and she did go on to be a cosmetologist. But my dad was a cook, and so just having that kind of family dynamics, and I was the baby, you know, that we were just talking about with Adler, how you have the ranges of birth ranges. So I was the baby, and so that meant that I got to see my older siblings go through things and sit back and say, and then decide whether I was going to do the same thing or not. And having sickle cell disease, I always felt like I didn't want anyone to really feel sorry for me. And I did want people to understand that I thought I was strong enough to handle it, especially with my parents, because I saw how hard it was on them and not knowing, and their tears made me cry. You know what I'm saying? I'm in pain and they trying to help me, and I'm trying to comfort them and say, I'm gonna be all right, I'm gonna be all right, you know. And so just that kind of family dynamic, and just I felt like I took a lot on my shoulder. That's where my trauma came from, because it made me this people pleaser. I always wanted to bring people together and not fight and not fuss, because I was already dealing with something that was traumatic to me, you know, that hurts my body so much that, you know, one day I'm this happy go lucky child, and then the next day, who is this, you know, blob of flesh that can't even move, like, you know, just full of pain, you know. And it's like you internalize in a way like, do my family love me? You know, will I ever have friends? Will I ever date or have a boyfriend, and so as I got older and started to answer some of these questions, the only thing I thought I could be successful in is being a parent. Like you said, James, you didn't go off to college because who's gonna take care of me? I saw my friends go. They were leaving, they were going to work, either going to work or going to school. And I was just sitting there looking out the door like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't even know what I can do, especially knowing how much education I missed. I didn't feel comfortable in my skin. And that's why I said I am comfortable today, though. I know who I am today, though. But back then, I didn't know who I was. I had so much anxiety, and there was no diagnosis in the mid 60s, when I was born. Didn't know anything about that, but I knew I felt it in my body, this, and now that I can put a word to it, this anxiety all the time. And it was just in situations I couldn't even have a voice. I didn't even have a voice, and I sought out other people's opinion because I thought they must know. They must know better than me. And so I listened to other people. I didn't know how to make decisions for myself. I just, ran to and fro, because I had a lot of trauma, being chased home from school, thrown rocks at, all kinds of things, and so you internalize that and you just try to keep a low profile. But then I think the Scorpio in me, I had a mouth and I couldn't, and so it was just messed up. I was just keep getting into all kinds of situations. But those adolescent years, was a mess. And so that's why I think I became a therapist, because I did truly want to understand relationships. I wanted to understand myself in terms of having a relationship with myself and understanding me as a person living. That's why I said I am Felicia Hunt and I live with sickle cell. I don't usually say I have it. I say I live with it because I don't want it to identify who I am. It's like, this is who I'm bringing myself full out, and this is what I live with. And so I think in terms of navigating our lives, if we can just go to the table from the beginning and establish some parameters to say, hey, this is what I'm going to need to be successful at school, or this is what I'm going to need to be successful in this job. And we just have to bring it in the room, and we just have to have those conversations. And if you can't find an employer that agree with that, I don't think that's a company that I would want to work for. If I can't come to the table and say, these are the things that I need. And I think that's why I was so strategic at wanting to become a therapist, because I could work my own hours. It had that element to it, and it was a type of stress that I could deal with, and it wouldn't make me sick. Okay, so I'm saying things here. I want to make sure I am keeping up with everything on the chat. But go ahead, Dr. Rowley. What do you want to say about the social aspect?
Thank you. So now that we talked about social, and you've already said it earlier, we are social beings. And you cannot become a hermit until you become older, if that's your choice. So when you're born, you're a social being within your family. So I would like for everyone to talk about those family dynamics. We actually don't talk about that enough in the sickle cell community. What was that like? If you had siblings, um, was it easy for them to accept? Sometimes they get mad, sometimes they get jealous. What was that like in terms of with you and your mom, you and your dad? That's the family part of the social part. It makes a difference in terms of how you're going to continue on with others. And then what about the friends part? And so when we look at this holistically, I want to know more about, so what are those friendships like? I remember a young lady in one of our support groups, 18. she had never shared with her friends that she had sickle cell, never. And the group said, "So how do you explain when you're in the hospital? What do you tell them?" And she says, "I just told them that I had the flu or I had a
Yeah.
bad cold, and it took 7 to 10 days." So that's, you know, to me, that meant a whole lot, and we asked her about that, and she said, "I'm afraid that if they know I have sickle cell, they're gonna treat me differently," and she doesn't wanna be treated differently. And, so she valued the friendship, but there was that fear. So, again, all of this plays a part. So I was hoping that Dr. Terry and James, you all can talk about the social aspects of your family dynamics, as well as, your friendships, and what we do in terms of helping people to become whole is, so if you're in friendships where you're trying to buy your friends or they're taking advantage of you, you wanna look at that in terms of whether or not this is healthy. Same thing in terms of family. Those are the people that our family is what you were born into. And so it's almost you feel as if you don't have a choice, but those dynamics sometimes are not healthy. And is it because you've had a chronic illness? And everything changes when a child, not just sickle cell, but a child has a particular type of chronic illness that's lifelong. And the whole family has to try to adjust to that. There's divorces that occur. There's dads and moms that don't believe that the child is theirs because we don't have that in our family, not
A lot of
knowing
times.
that, it just takes people to. So these run deep, but we don't talk about it, but it's real and it impacts how you are with your family, your friends, and the family that you're hoping to actually have. Can you guys talk about that?
How
Yeah,
about
who
you
would like to
start
go
this one,
first?
James?
Okay, you want me to start off? All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, in terms of the family aspect, um, it brought my family closer together. I know you mentioned like it could tear family apart when you go through things. I had three other siblings, so I'm the second youngest. Um, and it made them like overprotective of me. They all watched over me. They all wanted to make sure I was okay. My mother kept us close knit. Because of my health, it just brought us together. Like I said, they were all at the school with me, so they could pick up my homework. But I think it gave them compassion with dealing with other people because they watched me. They would come up to the hospital when I was sick. They would always be there. When I was at home, they would be the ones running to the store to get me like a soda for my stomach when I was on the medication and something to make my stomach feel better. So my family was definitely took a part of the illness and just like wanted to make sure I was okay. They did everything to make sure I was okay. They never made it seem like they was upset with me when I got sick. I know plans canceled on them. I don't know how they felt because of like if a plan got canceled. I don't know exactly how they felt. I never asked them that as I got older, but I know I know it affected them somewhat, but they never let it show to me. And then my parents took two different approaches when it came to my illness. My dad was more open and honest with it about it. He would tell people, "Oh, it's just sickle cell," or like just just don't care. He would tell my friends when I was in the hospital, "Oh, he in the hospital, you can go see him." And I'm like, like I don't want him up here because I didn't want people to know. So he was more open about it, and my mother was more wanted to just keep it between us. And then like when I wanted her to keep it between us, she would be okay with that because she understood it was important to me. So they definitely was there for me. It definitely brought us closer together. We're still close to this day and I think it's a big part because of my health. I think we all went through the same struggle because I was in the hospital so often. So they never once let it be known. And when I was in the hospital, my mother would have to care for me, and so then my dad would have to step up to the plate. And I know my sisters hated it because he would have to do their hair, and so it didn't look quite like mom's did it, but no, my dad would have to do their hair, get them ready for school, and then send them on their way, and then he would have to go to work. But it took a lot out of it brought us together because we had happiness, but people don't understand the amount of financial burden it causes on the family to have someone with sickle cell. So I know it played a part in as much on what we was able to have, because they had to make sure I had medication and this. So we didn't grow up with money, because of, I think my health played a part in that, because they had to take care of me and medical bills and all of this. So it that was the only piece that I know for sure that took effect on the family, was the financial side of things. But besides that, we had love, we had happiness, and we was a close family.
Awesome.
And my, I could say my relatives didn't understand. So when I was out at parks and things, my relatives didn't understand why my mother was always so protective of me until I got older. But they didn't understand why she was always watching over me, or just make sure you bundle up in the coat when it's when it's snowing. Make sure you wear your scarf. They just thought she was just being too overprotected, but they didn't understand the extent of my health, because they wasn't there in the hospital, or at home, and seeing how much I would go into the crisis when I was younger. So they didn't quite get it, but because of that, like I said, it brought us closer together, because my relatives didn't understand what I was going through, and what my mother went through. So that's on the family part. I'll let Terry share his family part, and we can get into the social.
Thanks, James.
Yeah.
I would say my family, my birth changed the course of my entire family story. My father was in the military. Um, we live here in Virginia, Petersburg, Virginia, because there's an army base right next door called Fort Lee, and that's where he was stationed. After my birth, uh, my parents wanted me to have a stable home and a regular hospital, and so that I could have the best chances of survival. So my father retired from the military and went into civilian life, and that's why we are here. And I didn't even recognize that until way into my adulthood, the sacrifices that were made by and decided upon by my parents on my behalf. Um, but they never, that never showed. I had to figure that out myself. I was like, oh, that's why we live here. That's why he retired. I figured all that mainly my own. Um, I had two cousins. My aunt passed away when I was in about second grade, and my two female cousins came to live with us. So I am the youngest child of my family. I have three brothers, three sisters, but only one of those is a whole sibling. So I mainly grew up with one sister and those two cousins. The rest of my sisters and brothers grew up elsewhere with their fathers and stepmothers or whatever. And I had one of those sisters who would regularly come and stay with us. And I think, as I said before, because I ended up being the poster child, my mother was very active. She made sure my poster was up in the school, and so everybody kind of knew about it. When I went to the hospital, they were there. Even after my parents divorced, when I was about 11, my mother didn't go very far away. If I got sick, she was usually one that came and took me to the hospital. Um, and my parents would come visit me in the hospital so regularly that I actually knew what their footsteps sounded like coming down the hallway. I knew it was my dad or that was my mom and they were here. Uh, my siblings, I guess in youth, they were understanding. Like when I was under 10 or so. Um, my I do feel like my two cousins they were the most compassionate. It's almost as if when they got there, they were given the directive, watch him, keep an eye on him, protect him. And so I always felt like, you know, these group of females were here to always protect me from anything. And they did so. But I do have, like, when I was a teenager, in maybe 11th grade, I have a story I tell a lot about my two sisters. And it was finals in high school. And I was up all night basically trying to study. And I drank some Tang and I took a no dose because I had been up all night. And immediately I had this shock of pain that made me fall to the ground in the kitchen. So I crawled all the way to the bathroom. I tried to get in a hot bath because I wanted it to go away. I was, please go away. I want to go to school. I want to go to school. It's not working. And so, like, I don't have any clothes on. And I crawled to my sister's bedroom, open the door, reach up over the door, and I'm like, help me, I'm sick. And they're just in the bed like, go away. Like, you know, so I'm kind of trying to say that over time, you know, family kind of gets used to you being sick and they become more nonchalant about it. Even now, I was sick a month or so ago, and I'm just struggling. I'm struggling, and we have all these steps in this building, and I'm at the bottom of the steps, you know, and my mom just goes up the steps, you know. And so a couple days later, I was like, Mom, why you ain't help me? Try to help me. She was like, you got it. You gonna be all right. So I mean, it's not like I mind, but at the same time, I'm just like, y'all, you know, y'all have become a little bit too comfortable with the fact that I have this illness. Do you know how seriously, you know, dangerous it actually is? It's like people, you know, when they're around you so much, they kind of tend to forget. I even actually forget. I always think I'm going to be all right and don't realize the serious consequences that could happen from my own actions that might get me sick. So I've always had the same type of love, and I've had that support. You know, those same sisters have been to the hospital plenty of times and done things for me that you know I don't even want to mention live, to take care of me when I have not been well. So I grew up in a very, very stable and loving environment, surrounded by people who were very understanding and supportive of my illness. But I also do have the same types of relatives. I have a sister, another sister, you know, who maybe 2 years ago said something like, she said something to the fact like I can help it. Like, why are you doing this? You know, why would you do this right now? This is a bad time for this to happen. Like, I can decide when I'm going to be sick and when I'm not. Like, I can control it. And
Right.
you know, it upset me that she didn't understand that I can't control it, you know, and like at all. I mean, if it happens, it happens. And when it decides that it wants to express itself, there's very little that I can do to control it. So I would say that that's how my family dynamic has been. It's been a very good one. Very, very understanding and loving family.
Awesome. Very good. I know for me, it was not talked about. I think I listened. I was in the right place at the right time to hear my parents say some things. I remember when I first understood that my dad, he was an older gentleman, so he had a pension, or he was on Social Security or something, and because he was on Social Security, I could get disability benefits because he had a dependent who was disabled, and somehow in that moment, I can just feel my parents in the room feel a little bit lighter, like, okay, this is going to help. This extra money that was going to be coming in and being able to get health insurance and, medical insurance and everything due to my father, and I just remember feeling like, oh, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. Because when I was diagnosed at 6 years old, when the doctor said the diagnosis, I looked over at my mom like, what is that? And she looked back at me like, I don't know, and so at that moment, and then the doctor continued on and he mentioned life expectancy. And then at 6 years old, I had to deal with, I might not live, like throwing that on the 6-year-old, I had to hold that information, and I had to make up my mind, well, I'm not going to let this doctor or whatever this thing is I have determine my life. And so I just found some way. I must have just stuffed it. You know what I mean? I just stuffed it. But hospitals were my second home, out in 1 week, out in 1 week and out. And I think the only other thing around my family dynamic was every time around my birthday, because it's around Halloween, October the 30th, they always wanted to throw me a party. I had these big, lavish, Halloween parties, and, family would come and everybody would be enjoying themselves, and I'd be sick with a crisis, sitting on my mom's lap and saying, not yet, Mom, I don't want to go to the hospital. I just want to watch everybody eat my ice cream and cake, and so she'll just hold me in her lap, and I'm watching everybody enjoy themselves. And so, we just lived. It wasn't talked about. My siblings, they didn't treat me any different. My older brother terrorized me and my sister. You know what I mean? And what older brothers do, zipping us up in sleeping bags and smothering us and doing all this he treated me normal. He didn't treat me like I had something I was delicate. But but no, it wasn't talked about. But I know as I got older and I was with extended family, the discussion became, what do you think you did to cause this? I never heard that before. What did I do? Mm-hmm. What did I do to cause this? I never thought about that before. Bringing that question up like that is crazy. So yeah, that was a part of my family experience.
I was going to share before we have you talk about the social part, the family. I'm sorry, the friends part. Interestingly, I remember I was an adult now, and we were at one of our family reunions in Louisiana, Baton Rouge. Now, my uncle, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, but he was a chemist, so I figured he definitely understood how one gets sickle cell. So I took that opportunity to share with the family about sickle cell disease. It was a reunion. I was the only one in the family, so I wanted to know, did you guys know about it? So I asked my uncle, who was the oldest, and I said, so that meant that, so if my father has it, the trait, and my mom has the trait, that meant that I said, either my grandmother or my grandfather have the trait. He said, mm-mm. I said, Uncle Carol, yes, it does. In order for my father to have the trait, that meant that your mother or your father, he said, now everyone is like, Carol, don't you understand? She's explained. And that meant, he said, mm-mm. So I took from that, oh my goodness, somehow you're thinking that having the trait is not good because you're a chemist and should understand how it works. And I smile only because we all know how it works. My
Right.
grandmother or my grandfather is great, okay? So,
Right.
unless my father was an idiot, which he wasn't, his mother or father, and I just thought that dynamic right there of not wanting to accept it was quite interesting. I mean, I smile about it, but quite interesting. So, why don't we move on? We're nearing, can you believe it? We're nearing the end. We want to talk
That's,
about the family, the social. Oh yeah, go ahead, James.
I just want to say something. Felicia brought up a good point. It was important too that my mother, she never treated me the same. I mean, any different than any of my other siblings. When I got in trouble, I got in trouble. So it was none of that being treated differently in that terms. She only was there for my health, and that's, treated me different when it came to my health. But as far as getting in trouble, it was never any different. And I think that makes that's important on the family, because when you have siblings, if you look at that as, okay, he can't get in trouble, it can create a some I can't figure out the right word, but some
Animosity.
animosity or hatred, like towards the person who is sick. So and can have some divide. So that's all I wanted to bring up right there.
Yeah,
Yes.
I wasn't treated differently in that
Okay.
sense either.
So, gosh, the last part of the social. Oh yeah, the one time we wish we got different treatment. Okay. Um,
Right.
so
Yeah.
so the social part, meaning the friends part, hey, that also lends itself to mental health. It can. And so we want to hear, just to let you guys know, I did put to the audience if they had any stories different for them to share or to email us. So that is out there. But let's talk about friends. I don't know. Was that challenging? I heard some of your stories in terms of Felicia, you people throwing rocks at you,
Taste.
or James, people are always commenting on how you looked. And
Mhm.
but then now you're an adult, and so to some degree that might play a role. Um, or like the young lady I shared who was ashamed and didn't want anybody to know. So can you guys talk about that friendship, growing up and even now, and how that might um, kind of play a part?
Terry, did you want to go or do you want me to go?
You should go ahead.
Okay, so um, growing up, yeah, I never told anybody because I didn't want to be treated different, special, and I knew that I wanted to be seen like I could do everything else. So I never shared it. The day I decided to share it, I was much older. I was like 26, and I had some friends, some neighborhood friends that I was close to, and they were getting ready to move out of town. So I'm just like, I better let them know. For some reason, I just thought it was a perfect time to share with them, and so I did share it with them and let them know, I had sickle cell. When I wasn't coming around, I was in and out of the hospital because I would also make up excuses, and that I was heat stroke or just uh, I had a cold or flu, the same as um, the lady you talked about, or that I was visiting family. So that was a out of town. So that was like one of many excuses. But the day I decided to share with them, they was like no, they had different understanding. It was just like they was okay with it, knowing, and it was just like you should have said something sooner. And then it was just to the point where they understood why when I didn't come around, it wasn't because I didn't want to be around. It was because, oh, he probably sick. Oh, that's why he wasn't around because he was sick. I knew it was something like your eyes. I knew it was something. So they had a better understanding. And once I told them, it was no more when we would go to basketball courts to play. It was no more asking me to play. It was just like, you good or you want to play if you want to play. But it was no more pressure to play. Wherever we was out for long periods of time and they were driving anywhere, they would be like, want me to stop and get you a soda, some juice, you need anything. So it was almost a more caring need, and a better understanding, and they was okay. So it let me see that, I should share what I was going through. I'm okay with sharing what I was going through. Even their mother looked over me now. So when I came over the house, she was just like, James, you good? Like, yeah, I'm doing good. So it was just always just seeing how I was doing, and it was always more caring. And then they said, let me know if you're in the hospital, if you need anything. Of course, I still didn't want them in the hospital just because I just like it was my space, the hospital. It was just where I would just sleep. I basically would sleep most of the time, and that's what I would tell them. I'm just sleeping anyway. I just don't feel like anything. So I never decided to let them come. And as I got older, like my friends now, so I lived in Arizona for a while. I just told them right out. I just told them, I had sickle cell. They was okay with it, and they would come see. They ended up coming to see me in the hospital. My friend and his wife. I was married at the time, not now, but they knew that they had already knew about me having sickle cell, so um, it was okay with them, and they was just okay with just being around me. They just wanted to be around me and just wanted to know more information about sickle cell. So it was questions that come up because that's usually what goes into it when you tell somebody that you have sickle cell. Most people heard of it, but they don't know exact. So they may ask some questions, and it's like if you're comfortable answering it, then like if not, then they wouldn't ask anything. But I was okay with it, and they would just kind of ask questions. So that's pretty much how my friendships went. But for a long time, I kept it hidden. And I think, like I said, my treatment, hydroxyurea, had a big effect on the things I could do, because now I could tell somebody I was sick and I had sickle cell, but I wasn't going to the hospital, so I was fine. So I could still do everything. So it was just like I wasn't in and out of the hospital. I was living. They saw me every day. It was just the thing that, hey, I have sickle cell. This is what I'm going through, or I may go through.
So, okay, my turn. Uh, I would say I
Yeah.
keep starting off with that. My childhood friends, they all knew from the beginning. Again, I was the poster child. The whole county knew. So it's something that I didn't necessarily really have to introduce to my childhood friends, going from kindergarten all the way to high school. And those the best friends that I had, I guess around the high school time, they're very also kind of comfortable with it. They really didn't treat me much different than anyone else. And I wouldn't say that they didn't tease me. I wouldn't say that, but they, if I get sick, and someone is like, well, where's Terry? They be like, oh man, his body hurt, he'll be back in a few days. And I would say that almost, I think that helped me, but that's also kind of the viewpoint that I would have. Like, hey, I'm just out of commission for a little bit. Once I'm, out of this hospital, we're gonna do it again. So it was those more, and so I don't really think many of my friends at that young age ever visit me in the hospital. I can't recall it happening. So it wasn't until probably my mid-20s where I did actually have friends come to see me, and it is very odd to me. We were speaking about this yesterday, that the reaction from male friends and female friends, it seems to be very drastically different. Um, and then it's also different depending on if I like right when I start having a crisis, and I'm at home or somewhere else, versus what it's like in the hospital. So all the guys, they always seem to panic. What do I do? Where are we gonna go? What's wrong? How do I help?
Mhm.
That's kind of the reaction that I've always gotten, but they've all pretty much risen to kind of to the occasion. I've had people, throw me on their backs and carry me to down the steps or to the car. I got sick at a field party one time. It was just like a bonfire out in the backwoods of a farm. And I got rained on because I tried to be cool and sleep on the trunk of my car because everybody else was sleeping in their pickups, in the back of their pickups. I got rained on, and my car. So one of the guys actually was like, well, I'm going to go with you to the hospital. I'm going to drive you. And my car started breaking down on the way to the hospital. We were on the highway, and all of the gears, one by one, started to fail. And we stopped right on the side of the highway next to where you would get onto the highway. And so he put it in reverse and started backing up that ramp, the wrong way. And a police car happened to be driving by, going to an accident at the time, and told us, do not move this car any further. I'll call the ambulance. His name was Raymond Calhoun. He's passed away. He got out of the car and actually started pushing my car backwards, steering it up the hill. And it was one of the most extraordinary feats that I've ever seen in my life. And like that day, I felt like I was surrounded by angels. And then it ended up that we left our friends behind, and they just happened to get off on that exit to stop at a store. They couldn't see us or anything, and they saw my car down the hill. And so he was able to get with them, take care of my car, and I told them that I was okay. I'll see y'all later. I'll get my dad to come get me or something. And, to my surprise, I was, in the emergency room. I think it was so full they had me in the hallway or something. And I see all my friends coming down the hallway, and they're like, we're not going to leave our brother. We're not going to leave you. We, even though you said you're fine, we were coming to the hospital to be there for you. And that's been more of my adult experience. I had a fraternity brother. We had an argument about my illness one day, and he went and read about it. And then I got sick. And for the entire time I was in the hospital, he just went to class and came to the hospital and stayed with me like every night. And that, those friendships have just been very touching to me because I didn't have those in my childhood. So it's been very fulfilling to see people, once they really get it and understand or see it or go back and research it themselves, actually, that empathy and that care and compassion just blooms from them.
Yeah. Awesome. That's wonderful. Both of your stories. Yeah. For me, I had, friends that knew, but when I went into the hospital, I didn't have visitors from my friend. It was one friend in particular I really wanted to visit me, but I think I was being a little selfish because I didn't understand the impact of what I was going through, what it had on her. It was very hard for her to see me that way. And once I realized that, I was like, oh, it's not that she don't want to come, is that it's hard for her to come because she don't like seeing me in the condition and state that I'm in. So then I was able to have more empathy and compassion for her, understanding like it's okay, and one day when I did go into the hospital, she did come in and visit me, and that's when it kind of clicked and it turned on. But mainly I had this wonderful grandmother who would come, and I could just see it in her eyes. She would bring my favorite snacks, those cheese puffs or balls or whatever at the time you come in the get your fingers all yellow. I used to love that. She would bring them, and I could just see it in her eyes. If she could heal me with her eyes or just touch me with her hands. That's what I got from her. Like, she would, if she could take the pain away, she would. But being there and bringing me my favorite snacks was the best that she could do, because just seeing your relatives, just trying to advocate for you. My mom, she was 4'11", this little short chocolate black woman. When I would be in pain, she, screaming to the top of her lungs, "Help my baby, give her medicine, she's in pain." Um, it's just, you're trying to compose yourself. You in this pain, you see all this thing and hearing all these things happening, and you're just trying to be all right while all of this is happening. Is like, why don't people believe me that I'm in pain? Why they won't give me the pain medicine? And having all these kind of dynamics. But I think for the most part now, as an adult, since I've been in and out of hospital for all my life, I don't really, I mean, I have visitors, but I don't really mind if they come or not, because it's like, it's a choice. It's like, if you want to, you can. If you don't, it's okay. I'm gonna be all right. I can take care of myself. A lot of times, I used to want company or felt lonely in the hospital, but now it's like, I'm okay. It's a vacation. I use it like a vacation. Like, I can get some rest. You know what I mean? But they don't let you really rest in the hospital, because they always coming and poking on you, and you got to take this medicine. You got to take this vital. They got to do this, do that, do that. So anyway, yeah, I just think about now, I think this is where we're going to segue into, is like relationships. I think now, like, if I put myself out there to be in a relationship, disclosing having sickle cell, and giving them the choice if they want to be with a partner that have sickle cell. I was married before. He did accept it, but there were other things. So it's like, yeah, that's the only concern now. It's like, now, how can I move forward in a relationship and really be fulfilled and having that kind of dynamic happen? I know, James, you were married, and I'm wondering, you said you're not, was that any conflict in your marriage having sickle cell?
No, she was very understanding. She was very understanding. It just things went on in a relationship. But I will say that she got me to see that, because it is difficult on the person you're dating. Let's be honest. They have to be able to understand you fully. They have to know that you may not work, you may not be able to make as much money, and so because you're out of work, and so then, like, if they want to travel, they have to understand that. And sometimes it may just be one person in the house working. So that's the difficult piece when it comes into relationships, that people don't understand. But she was very understanding and fully there. The one thing I will say is that she got me to see that when I was in the hospital, I didn't know how she felt. She always said that you don't know how I feel when you go to the hospital. So it was that piece that I only looked at myself, and like, I know we all normalize sickle cell, because to me it's just another crisis. So every time I have a crisis, I'm just like, oh, it's okay. I'm just got to go to the hospital. I'm fine. But then again, like, she had to deal with the emotions of me being in the hospital and me being away and me not being there. And like I said, she was there. She was supportive. She would come up to the hospital and spend time. So it was very accepting. It's just that it was hard on it is hard on the in the relationship. You have to understand fully, and you have to know what somebody goes through and be willing to accept everything that comes along with it. Like, when a person can't work, the thing, when a person can't do things, you want to go on vacation, but then all of a sudden I'm sick. So it can take a toll on the other person. Or, like, they see their friends doing things with their husbands, and like, we can't do that because, like, either income, or it's just a lot of things that can go into it. But as far as being being there was she was accepting, and she got me. This is one thing she also did. She got me to open up more about my sickle cell. It was like, it's just sickle cell. You can tell people, but I also had to tell her in a way, explain to her in a way like, it's not something that you just go ahead and tell everybody the first time you meet them. So I had to explain it in a way to that her, um, because it's not, hi, my name is James. I have sickle cell. That's not how the interaction should go. It takes time for me, especially to warm up and then know that this person is going to be around, or this person is going to be in my life for me to have for them me to tell them like they have to have some consequence in my life. So that's what it comes to. And she would tell all her friends. So it put me in situations where I had to talk. And the one thing about it is I didn't know she was telling them anyway. Like she would, So when I was in the hospital, she was already telling her friends and like, oh, he's in the hospital, he has sickle cell. Because when I would go to the hospital, they would ask, if she would go somewhere and I'm not there, where's James? So it definitely was. She definitely was a supporter, but it was hard it can be hard in a relationship when you're dealing with somebody who may have a chronic illness, and that's what it was. And then as far as like, I know Terry got to say something, but I just want to take it back to where you said the social thing too. I went to school and I went to health as a medical assistant. So I was in school classroom and even at work, everything isn't all rosy when it comes to telling people about sickle cell, because I had those times where, I told everybody I had sickle cell. They all knew in my classroom. And then I went in the hospital and it was just like, oh, you're in the hospital. I was like, yeah. No one said, oh, can I come see you? So that's the point that gets me down. It's like, dang, nobody came to check on me, or nobody thought about coming to check. It was just like, oh, he's in the hospital. So when you tell somebody and you have those kind of relationships, it hurts when they don't reach out. At least reach out and say, oh, can I come see you? Gonna be all right. It's like I told a couple people, and it's like, ain't nobody said anything. And that happened at my job too. When I told some people that I was in hospital, it was like life went on for them, and I'm sitting here and I'm just thinking about myself, like, who cares? You can't go through those times when you speaking up about yourself.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, James. I think, um, I think in those situations, sometimes people don't know what to do. You
Yeah.
know,
Right.
they hear about it, but they don't know, is that okay? Would you like? And I think that's where, hey, conversation comes in, and being
Mhm.
able to, make light of it. Sometimes everything's not so serious, and you can make light, say, however that comes up in terms of wanting to have um, visitors, but you can't make people care. But I think sometimes people don't know what they don't know what to say or how to act, and that happens for death when someone dies, or any kind of event that comes up, something that are not part of a person's regular way of being. They don't actually know what to say, if they're saying the right thing. But thank you for sharing that perspective, because seriously, um, those of us who are warriors don't always, because we're in our own, we're dealing with our own pain, being able to see it from the other, literally just
Person.
the other side
Mhm.
of them looking and seeing how you, um,
Yeah, most
Dr.
men don't.
Terry.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to
No.
say most men don't like coming to hospitals,
Mhm.
So that could be a little bit when you talk about your coworkers, and like I said, like my friend, it just could be so hard, to face or to see you in that kind of
Mm.
pain or predicament, just laying in the bed and they don't know what to do. It's like just putting yourself in
Yeah.
their shoes to say, I can get it, I can understand why. But what happens is that's a trigger, like Dr. Raleigh was talking about. Know your triggers, because that's a trigger. You're being triggered to think that people don't care, but that's a negative
Mhm.
message because of what it appears to be. but it's not true. So it's that false evidence appearing real, and it's not real. And so sometimes you just have to just have those conversations if the person is that close to you, or if you have that kind of friendship, like, hey man, or hey, Sally Sue, or whatever, when I get sick, how does it affect you? It's like I never considered, like, what's your perspective? Can you tell me? Because I know I just be thinking about me, and I wish people would come see me, and this, da, da, da. And then you'll see, like, if you give them the space to just be honest, because it is their choice. It's like people have different personalities and what they can handle. Like some people just pass out of blood. It's just like that. It's like seeing you that way just triggers them. And so you just have to have a little patience and, just be all right and not internalize so much, so you can keep that depressive feeling or abandonment feeling off of you, and just feel better about the situation. Like, okay, I get it. I understand, and I can get through this.
And these are women I was close to. And that's why I don't, when I go into dating, I don't share it right away until I feel like they're going to be like, oh, what can I do for you? So until I know. But
yeah, but see, here's the thing though, and I'm a certified sex coach, and you're getting into my field here now. See, instead of just waiting until you feel comfortable, the other parts you have to extend yourself to is really asking them, is this something that they can handle? See, that's what you want to know, because if you don't say it, they're not gonna say it, because they don't want to hurt your feeling, and they probably digging you and all this and all that, but they're not going to be 100% because they don't know how to, because they feel like they may hurt your feelings or something like that. But to just, when you get to that point of understanding that I really like this person, I want to be with them, just go ahead and have the conversation and see if they feel like, because it's a caregiver's position. And it's more than a notion to become a caregiver. It's more than a notion. And so it has to be in that person to be able to do it. And if they can't do it, you can't, talk about them or hold them accountable in a negative way, because it's just not in them. You just have to be an adult about it and say, I get it, I understand. It's not a waiting to see if they care. They already care. It's a wanting to understand what role can they play in the relationship. And if they can't take that role on, it is their right.
definitely.
Terry,
you got it.
Dr. Terry.
Take us home.
I spoke about male friends. And so when it comes to, I guess, females, so mainly the females have been the ones I've been dating. That's why I really didn't bring them up in the friendships. They've always kind of been the dating ones that have seen me in these crises, painful situations. And the reaction is it seems totally different. Where the guys are, panicking, the women are very much more nonchalant and calm about it, from my experience. And it's almost as if I've had to have to, I probably all of them, it's had to be some type of teaching experience. They've had to kind of learn. I've had to kind of tell them what I need, because usually I don't need much. I just want you there. I don't need you to do really a whole lot for me at all. I just don't want you to leave me by myself. And so therefore that nonchalantness usually is like in the home setting. I've had girlfriends sit there and watch me crawl to the bathroom, and they just sitting there eating popcorn on the couch. But in the hospital is when it changes. When they see me actually in that hospital bed, it's almost like that's when it clicks to them, like really there's something wrong, because again, having this illness, it's invisible. They can't, there's nothing broken.
Yeah, like, is he faking? What is he doing?
Yeah,
Right?
I think
No, I'm
faking.
sorry. I had to say something, Dr. Terry. Dr. Terry, to me, that means I think people watching too much action movies because
Okay,
nothing is
no,
moving.
Yeah.
Nothing is moving.
all right, no feelings. Like seeing somebody crawl, you're not gonna come to their aid. Like you are that insensitive. Like what?
Well,
Oh
I
my
think that
goodness.
is some type of. I think that women are like, well, we have, menstrual cycles, we have babies.
Oh no.
This is pain. Like, we know pain, and you're a man. You know what I'm saying? You're supposed to be strong and be able. You can take it.
I'm sorry. I missed something. I'm sorry, I missed
Yeah.
something. I don't know
Even
what
my mom says,
I don't know what
you're a
you
man.
said.
You'll be
It
all
went
right.
like this. I don't know what.
Yeah, think she does. My
Okay.
mom says that.
Well,
Your mom said what? Repeat
my
that.
mom is like, you're a man. You'll be all right.
Oh well, well that's that duality, that socialization. How men are socialized to be strong and tough,
Right,
and you want
right.
No, you can be vulnerable. You can need help. You can have assistance. I mean, but just as a human being, if somebody is in pain, you want to come to their aid, wouldn't you? It's like, how, you know what I mean? It's like, I can't understand. I couldn't imagine in my head. I'm like you, Dr. Raleigh. I couldn't imagine in my head seeing my boyfriend crawling on the floor and I'm sitting on the couch eating popcorn. What? Like, what's wrong, honey? What do you need? How can I help you? Like,
it's happened with more than one girlfriend too.
I mean, they are desensitized. I don't even know if they know what being a woman is. They got their own little traumas or something.
I've also had those that don't want to, like, we've had to negotiate because they don't want to go sit in the emergency room with me. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, well, just drop me off at the door then. I have to take care of myself. I've had
I've had to drive myself. Yeah.
But I have had those where it got better. And along the way, we came to an understanding, and that they really understood that I did need this support and help and all these things at those times. So it's just always seemed to be like this hard, like, learning curve that I had to go through.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I don't necessarily want to say it's everyone at all.
No. Yeah, Ranisa said if you see a man crawling, it must be something wrong. If you see a man crawling, it must be something wrong, right? So that's what one of the comments was.
Must be something wrong, right?
So, wow, you guys, we really delved deep into Adler's first two life tasks, work and social, school, family, friends. Wow. And then I know that we were getting a little bit into next one with the love. You all, James and both you as well, Dr. Terry, talked a little bit about that. We're going to dive in deeper next time. First of all, thank you for sharing. We all make it seem that it's so easy, and it isn't always, to be able to share and bear who you are. But I think it's a learning. People can actually identify and feel that they're not alone. And that's part of, again, the whole life task and us being social beings and people feeling alone and not connected and being able to hear and hopefully being able to reach out and learn that they're not alone. I'm going to actually turn this over back to our moderator as we are, we're coming up on the 1:00 hour on Pacific time. And, but Felicia, if you want to be able to read some of the comments that are coming up on the screen as we then start winding down.
Pat Corley says, you all are amazing. Tell the truth and slay the sickle cell demon. Without visibility, there is no opportunity for growth of change. Yes. And with that, you gentlemen have been wonderful. You've been very vulnerable to tell your stories. We greatly appreciate you being here. And Dr. Raleigh, thank you again for having us here to tell our stories and hopefully help someone else. And they don't have to feel like they're alone. We are a community here. We're here to help one another. It's like Ubuntu. I am because you are. So, yes, this was great, Peggy Wegg said. So, yes, I am so grateful for this platform. I'm here for you anytime, Dr. Raleigh. This mini series, we have part 2 coming up. What's part 2, Dr. Raleigh? What is it?
Love.
What is
And
love?
according to Adler and Carl Rogers, love is the most challenging life task to literally grab a hold of and to master. He felt that all the other ones you could master, but love was
But
the
love.
hardest. And I think you guys were kind of tapping into that a little bit because it's not just you and then navigating, like you said, your friends or your family, but this is a relationship where you want to become unified. And that's actually very, very different than any other life task. And that's why he said it's the most challenging and sometimes the most heartbreaking, but it's the one that can lead also to mental health issues when we don't find the right relationship. We're in a terrible relationship. We're in a relationship where it's not fulfilling, or it could be abusive, or what have you. So we're going to deal much deeper next
So
time. But love is the
stay
most challenging,
tuned.
but the most
Stay tuned, everyone, for part
definitely.
2.
So hey,
Yes. So thank
so
you.
we're at the hour, and I don't know if there's any other questions, but if you all can have James and then Dr. Terry, if you guys can say final words, that would be great. Or some parting words, James.
I'll just say, just keep going and just stay strong, warriors out there. Um, yeah, to just keep going and stay strong. I know we talked about the support. It's very important that you have supportive people around you, because I think that's where people get lost when having this chronic illness. You need to have support around you so that you can get through and make it, because nobody can do this alone. It's a fight. It's a challenge. So you have to have good support around you. You have to be in the right environment, and you have to stay positive and always keep that positive outlook on life, and just know things gonna work out and be okay for you.
Dr.
And
Terry.
you are not alone. I think we see that, because I'm
Right.
42. I didn't grow up with Facebook, but as you can see, we can connect with others. So you are not alone. So just remember that.
I
Awesome.
agree. You're not alone. I think, warriors, that it's as you deal with these physical battles that you have, continue to be cognizant of your mental health and how this cycles that we go through are affecting your mental health, because it's very important. My first awareness that there was anything going on related to sickle cell in my mental health was the death dates, how Felicia spoke about the life expectancy. And it wasn't until I was about to get my PhD that I was like, why don't I have a plan after this?
Right.
And it never crossed my mind. I really didn't have a plan, because I didn't know that I didn't really think I was going to make it that far, live
That's
that
right.
long. So you start thinking about, how is this illness possibly affecting your mental health, and speak with other people, and seek out any type of help or even therapy if you believe that you may need some.
Yes. And Cayenne Wellness do have that services, counseling services available for those who needs it. Awesome.
Fantastic.
Well, I think that concludes our work and social part 1 mini series. And I want to thank you all again for coming. Thank the audience again for being here. And thank you again, Dr. Raleigh, for all your support.
Thank you all. And so we do want to thank Pfizer. They're the ones who are sponsoring this mini seminar on on mental health. And so if our speakers can hang out for a little bit, we're actually going to uh, give you back your afternoon. Everyone have a good one, safe, peace and love. Thank you. Oh, how to contact for counseling. So if you live in
Oh, yeah.
California, if you live in California, you'll contact your nearest community health worker, and it is actually on our website, www.cayennewellness.org. And if you're out of the state, then we could contact other CBOs that are in your state that actually may have some resources for you. All righty. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.